The massive screens in the Galactic Council's main chamber showed a small fleet of ships moving through space. These vessels looked like tiny silverfish compared to the enormous whale-like ships that usually traveled between the stars. Admiral Vale, the Council's military advisor, couldn't help but laugh. "Are you certain these are actually warships?" he asked, his deep purple skin darkening with amusement. "They look more like escape pods to me." Council President Reed leaned forward in her chair, her four eyes narrowing as she studied the images. The ships were indeed small, barely a quarter the size of the Council's smallest patrol vessel. But there was something about their movement that caught her attention. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for their size. "What do we know about these humans?" she asked, turning to the intelligence officer standing nearby. The officer, a tall being named Major Blake, stepped forward with his report. "They've only been in space for about 200 years, Madam President. They started with primitive chemical rockets and have somehow managed to develop faster-than-light travel in that short time." Admiral Vale snorted. 200 years. That's barely enough time to design a proper engine cooling system. They must be using dangerous, unstable technology. The council chamber buzzed with murmurs. Most species took at least 500 years to develop safe space travel after discovering rocket technology. Humans had done it in less than half that time. "Show me their home system," President Reed commanded. The screens changed to show a yellow star with 8 planets. The third planet, mostly blue and green, was clearly the humans' homeworld. What surprised everyone was the amount of activity around it. Hundreds of those small ships moved in careful patterns, like a dance that had been practiced for centuries. "Their defensive formation is unusual," Admiral Vale admitted, studying the movement. "But their ships are so small. What kind of weapons could they possibly fit in there? What kind of living space? They must be terribly cramped." Major Blake cleared his throat. "Our scans show their ships are heavily shielded. We can't get clear readings of their internal systems." This made Admiral Vale sit up straight. His amusement vanished. "Impossible. Ships that small can't generate enough power for heavy shielding." Nevertheless, Major Blake continued, "That's what our instruments show. We've also detected unusual energy signatures that don't match any known technology in our database." President Reed tapped her fingers on her chair's arm, thinking. The Council had clear protocols for dealing with new spacefaring species. Usually, they would be offered protectorate status, a chance to learn from more advanced civilizations while being protected by the Council's mighty fleets. "Send them the standard greeting and protectorate offer," she decided. "Make it clear that isolation is the only alternative. We cannot have an unaligned species with unknown technologies so close to Council space." Admiral Vale nodded in agreement. "They'll accept, of course. All new species do once they see our fleet. Speaking of which," he smiled, showing his sharp teeth, "perhaps we should send the third battle group to deliver the message, just to ensure they understand their position." The third battle group was one of the Council's most impressive forces, 50 massive warships, each one bigger than a small city. Their very presence usually convinced new species to accept protectorate status without argument. "Approved," President Reed said. "But remember, this is a diplomatic mission. The ships are for show only." As the Council members left the chamber, Admiral Vale stayed behind, watching the screens. Something about these human ships bothered him. They moved too perfectly, too precisely. But he pushed the thought aside. After all, how dangerous could such tiny ships be? 3 days later, he would remember this moment and wish he had listened to his instincts. The message was sent, and the third battle group began its journey to the human system. The Council expected a quick response and an easy diplomatic victory. They had no way of knowing that they had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. No one in that chamber could have guessed that their laughter about the tiny fleet would soon turn to astonishment, and for some, fear, because these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And that made all the difference. Captain Jack Miller stood at the window of Earth Defense Station 1, watching his fleet perform their daily maneuvers. The 12 ships moved in perfect formation, their silver hulls gleaming in the sunlight. To him, they were beautiful. To the aliens who had just contacted Earth, they were apparently amusing. "They want us to what?" he asked, turning to face the holographic display of Admiral James Porter. "Accept their protection and guidance," Admiral Porter replied, his weathered face showing a hint of a smile. "Apparently, we're too young and inexperienced to be trusted on our own." Miller walked over to his desk and picked up the data tablet containing the Council's message. Their tone was polite, but left no room for debate. "Join as a protectorate or face isolation from galactic society. And they're sending 50 ships to help us understand our position," Miller read aloud, shaking his head. "Subtle." "Very," Porter agreed. "The Defense Council has made its decision. We're going to give them exactly what they're asking for, a demonstration." Miller looked up sharply. "Sir, we're going to show them our fleet capabilities," Porter explained. "But we'll do it our way. I want you to take your squadron to the meeting point they've designated." "Just my squadron?" Miller asked. His 12 ships were the best in the fleet, but still. "That's right." Porter's smile grew wider. "Let them think what they want about our numbers. You know what these ships can do." Miller nodded slowly. He did know. He had helped design them, after all. The aliens, with their massive vessels, had no idea what humanity had achieved through necessity and innovation. 3 hours later, Miller gathered his crew for the briefing. Lieutenant Anna West, his tactical officer, was already running simulations on the main screen. "Their ships are huge," she said, pointing to the projected images of the Council vessels. "Each one is about the size of Manhattan. But look at their engine configuration. All that size comes at a cost. Their maneuverability must be terrible." Commander Thomas Gray, the chief engineer, spoke up from his seat. "Their power systems are interesting, very traditional, very predictable." He grinned. "They have no idea what they're about to see, do they, sir?" "No, they don't," Miller agreed. "And that's exactly how we want it. Remember, everyone, we're not there to start a fight. This is a demonstration only. Let them think we're primitive until the right moment." The briefing continued as they discussed their approach. The Council's third battle group would be waiting for them at the edge of the solar system. The humans would arrive in their tiny ships, ready to prove themselves. As the crew prepared for departure, Miller received one last message from Admiral Porter. "Remember, Jack, humanity spent centuries dreaming of the stars. When we finally reached them, we didn't have the resources to build giant ships, so we got creative. Let's show them what human creativity looks like." The 12 ships of Earth's demonstration fleet moved into position. They were each only about 300 meters long, tiny compared to the Council's massive 5-kilometer vessels. But size wasn't everything. From his command chair, Miller watched as his crew made final preparations. The quantum-compressed engines hummed quietly, holding more power than the aliens would believe possible in such a small package. "All ships report ready, Captain," Lieutenant West announced. Miller nodded. "Send our response to the Council. Tell them we accept their invitation to demonstrate fleet capabilities, and we look forward to showing them how humans do things." The message was sent, and Earth's ships began their journey to the meeting point. Behind them, the sun shone on a world that had learned long ago that being small didn't mean being weak. The Council wanted a demonstration. They were about to get one they would never forget. After all, these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they were about to change everything. Admiral Vale stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching as the human ships approached. His massive fleet of 50 warships was arranged in the traditional display formation, designed to impress newcomers to the galactic community. Each ship gleamed with power, their huge hulls stretching for kilometers. "Look at them," he chuckled to his officers. They're like children's toys compared to our vessels. The 12 human ships moved closer, their silver hulls catching the starlight. They were arranged in a simple triangle formation, maintaining perfect spacing despite their small size. "At least they can fly in formation," Captain Rivers, his second-in-command, noted. "Though I wonder how they fit more than 10 crew members in such tiny ships." Vale nodded in agreement. "Begin the demonstration sequence. Let's show them what real warships can do." The Council fleet started their carefully choreographed dance. Massive engines flared as the giant ships moved in complex patterns, demonstrating their power and coordination. Energy weapons fired into empty space, creating spectacular light shows. But something was wrong. Vale noticed it first. The human ships weren't reacting as expected. There was no sign of awe or intimidation from them. They simply watched, their small forms floating silently against the backdrop of stars. "Your demonstration is impressive," came the calm voice of Captain Miller over the communication channel. "Would you like to see ours?" Before Vale could respond, the human ships moved, and everything he thought he knew about space warfare changed in an instant. The 12 ships scattered, each moving in a different direction, at speeds that seemed impossible. Their formation dissolved and reformed in the blink of an eye, the ships weaving between the massive council vessels as if they were standing still. "How are they moving like that?" Rivers gasped, staring at the tactical display. Nothing that size should be able to change direction that quickly. Vale watched in stunned silence as the human ships demonstrated maneuvers that his own vessels couldn't hope to match. They spun, rolled, and changed direction without any apparent thrust patterns. It was as if they were ignoring the basic laws of physics. "Scan them," he ordered. "I want to know how they're doing this." The sensor officers tried, but the readings made no sense. The energy signatures from the human ships were off the charts, yet there was no visible evidence of their power systems. Then came the most shocking demonstration of all. One of the human ships approached the Eternal Glory. It was so small it could have fit in the flagship's shuttle bay. Without warning, it disappeared. "Where did it?" Vale started to ask, but the words died in his throat. The small ship had reappeared instantly on the other side of his fleet. Then it vanished again, reappearing somewhere else. Again and again, it jumped, moving faster than any ship he had ever seen. "Micro-jumps," Rivers whispered in awe. "They've managed to make precise, faster-than-light jumps at tactical distances. That's supposed to be impossible." The demonstration continued for another 30 minutes. The human ships moved in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine, showcasing technologies that the Council had deemed theoretical at best, impossible at worst. When it was over, the 12 ships reformed their simple triangle formation, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Thank you for watching our demonstration." Captain Miller's voice came through again, still calm and professional. "We look forward to discussing a mutual exchange of knowledge with the Council, as equals." Admiral Vale stood in silence, his earlier amusement completely gone. He looked at his massive ships, seeing them differently now. All that size, all that power, and they had just been outmaneuvered by vessels they could barely see on their view screens. Because these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they had just changed the rules of space warfare forever. 20 years earlier, in the underground labs of the Earth Defense Research Center, Dr. Thomas Gray, now Commander Gray, stared at the failed engine prototype on his workbench. It was the 5th attempt that month, and Earth was running out of resources. "We can't build bigger ships," he muttered to himself, running his hands through his graying hair. "So we have to build better ones." The problem facing humanity was simple but seemed impossible to solve. Earth didn't have enough rare materials to build massive warships like those seen in science fiction movies. The largest ship they could construct was barely longer than 3 football fields. But that limitation had forced humanity to think differently. "Dr. Gray," his assistant called from the computer station, "look at these quantum compression readings. They're stable." Gray rushed over, his eyes widening as he looked at the data. They had been working on compressing matter at the quantum level, trying to fit more power into smaller spaces. Until now, every attempt had resulted in catastrophic failure. But this time was different. 6 months later, the first quantum-compressed engine was ready for testing. It looked tiny, about the size of a car engine. But it contained the power of a nuclear reactor. The technology allowed them to fold space within the engine itself, creating a pocket of compressed reality that could hold impossible amounts of energy. If we can't build big, Gray told the Earth Defense Council during his presentation, we'll build dense. The breakthrough changed everything. Within 5 years, humanity had developed an entire suite of similar technologies: quantum-compressed fuel tanks, weapons systems, and living quarters. Their small ships began carrying the power of vessels 10 times their size. But they didn't stop there. Dr. Anna West, now Lieutenant West, made the next breakthrough while studying old video games. Look at how small ships move in games, she told her team. They turn on a dime, change direction instantly. Why can't we do that? The answer came in the form of micro-jump technology. Instead of using traditional engines for complex maneuvers, they developed a way to make tiny, faster-than-light jumps. Each jump was precisely calculated, allowing a ship to essentially teleport short distances in combat. It's like a chess knight's move in 3 dimensions, West explained to Gray during the first successful test. We don't need to turn. We just jump to where we want to be, facing the direction we want to face. The final piece came from Captain Miller's work on hull design. Using ultra-dense materials developed through quantum compression technology, they created armor that could withstand impacts that would cripple larger ships. Size isn't everything, Miller told his crew during their first training mission. These ships represent humanity's greatest achievement, not because they're powerful, but because they're efficient. Now, as the Council fleet watched in amazement, all of that innovation was on display. Every small ship in Earth's fleet carried technology that had seemed impossible just 2 decades ago. Each vessel was a testament to human ingenuity, born from necessity and powered by creativity. In the ship's engine room, Commander Gray smiled as he monitored the quantum-compressed systems. He remembered those long nights in the lab, the failed attempts, the breakthroughs. The aliens thought size meant power, but humanity had learned a different lesson. In space, bigger wasn't better. Better was better. And humans had gotten very, very good at making things better. As the demonstration continued, Gray sent a message to the bridge. Captain, the quantum systems are performing perfectly. Should we show them what these tiny ships can really do? Because these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they were about to demonstrate just how far human innovation had come. Admiral Vale's pride had taken a serious hit. The human demonstration had made his fleet look slow and outdated. He couldn't let this humiliation stand. Captain Miller, he called over the communication channel, his voice tight with controlled anger. Your demonstration was impressive, but parlor tricks are not the same as real combat capability. There was a brief pause before Miller responded. What are you suggesting, Admiral? A mock battle, Vale announced, loud enough for all ships to hear. Your 12 vessels against my fleet. Combat simulators only, of course. No real weapons fire. The Council ship's computer systems could create a perfect simulation of space combat. Every shot, every movement would be tracked and calculated. Ships would respond as if they were in real combat, but without any actual damage. Captain Miller's response was calm and measured. We accept, Admiral, with one condition. Vale smiled. Now he had them. His fleet had never lost a simulated battle. Name your condition. No restrictions on tactical positioning before we begin. We'll need 10 minutes to get into our preferred formation. The alien admiral almost laughed. What difference could positioning make against overwhelming numbers? Granted, 10 minutes to position your fleet, as you wish. Vale watched as the 12 human ships began to move. Their formation made no sense to him. They spread out in what appeared to be random positions, some far above the plane of battle, others below. A few moved to positions that seemed to leave them completely exposed. "They don't even know basic combat doctrine," Captain Rivers commented from beside him. "This will be over quickly." Lieutenant West's voice came over the general channel. "All Earth ships report ready for combat simulation." "Very well," Vale said, his confidence fully restored. "Combat simulation will begin in 30 seconds. All ships, battle stations." Throughout the Council fleet, crews rushed to their positions. Weapons were charged, in simulation only. Shields were raised, and targeting systems locked on to the scattered human vessels. On the bridge of his ship, Captain Miller sat calmly in his command chair. Commander Gray's voice came through from engineering. "Quantum systems are running at peak efficiency, Captain. They have no idea what's about to hit them. Remember, everyone," Miller addressed his crew, "we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're showing the galaxy what humanity can do." "Combat simulation starting in 10 seconds, the computer announced. Vale allowed himself a satisfied smile. "Let's show these humans the difference between real warships and their little toys." 5 seconds. The massive Council ships hummed with power, their huge weapons arrays tracking the seemingly vulnerable human vessels. 3. Lieutenant West's fingers hovered over her tactical controls, a small smile playing on her lips. 2. Commander Gray watched his engine readings, ready to show the aliens what quantum compression could really do. 1. In that final second, Captain Miller thought about humanity's journey to this moment. All the challenges, all the innovations, all leading to this battle. Simulation start. Because these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating humanity. The moment the simulation began, every human ship vanished. Admiral Vale blinked in confusion. His tactical display showed 12 simultaneous microjumps, but his brain couldn't process where the human ships had gone. They had scattered in an instant, each jumping to a different position around his fleet. "Find them," he ordered, but it was already too late. The first strike came from below. 3 human ships appeared beneath his largest battleships, their weapons firing with pinpoint accuracy. In the simulation, alarms blared as engines were hit with devastating precision. "Impossible," Captain Rivers shouted. "Their targeting computers can't be that good." But they were. The human ships had used their small size to target exact points on the massive Council vessels. Each shot struck a critical system, guided by quantum-compressed targeting computers that could calculate firing solutions faster than any Council system. "All ships, return fire," Vale commanded. His fleet's massive weapons turned space into a deadly light show, filling the void with simulated energy beams and plasma bolts. But the human ships were already gone, jumping to new positions faster than the Council gunners could track. "They're too fast," a weapons officer reported. "We can't lock onto them." On his command ship, Captain Miller watched the battle unfold exactly as planned. "Lieutenant West, execute pattern Delta." The human ships moved as one, despite their scattered positions. They jumped in a complex dance that looked random but was precisely calculated. Each jump placed them in perfect firing position, and each shot struck home. In the first 2 minutes, 10 Council ships were marked as critically damaged by the simulation. Commander Gray's voice came through the command channel. "Quantum systems are performing perfectly, Captain. We can keep this up all day." The Council fleet tried to adapt. They switched to spread fire patterns, trying to catch the human ships with walls of weapons fire. But the humans had anticipated this. 4 Earth ships suddenly appeared in the middle of the Council formation. Instead of firing, they activated special electronic warfare systems. The Council's targeting computers went haywire, their own weapons fire now endangering their ships. "Break formation," Vale ordered desperately. "Spread out." It was exactly what the humans were waiting for. As the Council ships separated, they became even more vulnerable. The remaining 8 human vessels struck from multiple angles, their quantum-compressed weapons punching through simulated shields with ease. Lieutenant West's voice was calm as she reported, 30 Council ships marked as disabled, Captain. 20 remaining. The battle had lasted less than 5 minutes. Admiral Vale watched in stunned silence as his mighty fleet was systematically taken apart by ships he had laughed at just hours ago. The humans weren't just winning. They were doing it with a precision and efficiency that seemed impossible. Admiral, Captain Rivers said quietly, perhaps we should surrender. Vale finished the thought. In a training simulation. But as he watched another group of his ships marked as destroyed by the merciless simulation, he knew he had no choice. This is Admiral Vale to all ships, he announced, his voice heavy. Simulation end. Stand down. The human ships reappeared in their original formation, as if the intense battle had never happened. In just under 7 minutes, they had defeated a force more than 4 times their size. Captain Miller's voice came through, still professional. Thank you for the exercise, Admiral. I trust this answers any questions about our combat capabilities, because these weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they had just proven that size means nothing when faced with superior technology and tactics. The Council chamber was completely silent. On the massive screens, the recording of the simulated battle played again, showing how 12 human ships had systematically defeated 50 of the Council's finest warships. Admiral Vale stood before the Council, his pride wounded but his honor intact. I wish to officially change my assessment of human military capabilities, he announced. I was wrong about them. President Reed leaned forward in her chair, all 4 eyes focused intently. Explain what you observed, Admiral. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen, Vale admitted. They didn't build small ships because they were primitive. They built them because they found a better way. The screens changed to show detailed scans of the human vessels. The Council members murmured in amazement as they saw the quantum compression technology, the micro-jump systems, and the ultra-dense materials used in their construction. Commander Gray and Lieutenant West had been invited to explain the technical aspects to the Council. They stood before the alien leaders, no longer seen as representatives of a primitive species, but as equals. Necessity drove our innovation, Gray explained. We couldn't build big, so we had to build smart. West added, every system in our ships is designed for maximum efficiency. Size isn't everything. It's what you do with the space you have. Captain Miller, standing at the back of the chamber, smiled as he watched the Council members lean forward with interest. The same aliens who had laughed at Earth's tiny fleet were now taking notes on human engineering principles. President Reed raised her hand for silence. It seems we made a serious error in judgment, she announced. The offer of protectorate status is withdrawn. Instead, we would like to propose a full alliance with Earth, with equal standing in the Council. The human representatives shared knowing looks. This was what they had hoped for, recognition not just of their capabilities, but of their right to stand as equals in the galactic community. Furthermore, Reed continued, we would like to establish a joint technology exchange program. It seems we have much to learn from each other. Admiral Vale stepped forward again. If I may, Madam President. At her nod, he turned to face the humans. I owe you an apology. I judged you by the size of your ships, not by the intelligence and innovation they represented. That was a mistake I won't make again. Miller walked forward to stand beside his crew. Apology accepted, Admiral. Perhaps this can be a lesson for everyone. Never judge a species by the size of their fleet. Over the next few months, the galaxy changed. Council shipyards began incorporating human design principles, creating smaller, more efficient vessels. Human quantum compression technology revolutionized space travel, while Council expertise in other areas helped Earth advance in new directions. The story of the tiny fleet became famous throughout Council space. It was told as a reminder that innovation and efficiency could overcome any limitation, and that appearances could be deceiving. 1 year later, Admiral Vale stood on the observation deck of his new flagship. It was half the size of his old command, but twice as capable, built with a combination of human and council technology. Beside him stood Captain Miller, now Earth's representative to the Council's Defense Committee. "You know," Vale said, watching a mixed fleet of human and council ships perform maneuvers, "I still can't believe how wrong we were about you." Miller smiled. "It's an easy mistake to make. Everyone expects spaceships to be huge. But they don't need to be," Vale finished. "They just need to be human. Because in the end, they weren't just small ships. They were human ships. And they had changed the galaxy forever."